Welcome to the ET Now Global Business Summit. I always take a pride when I say anything with ET Now, so it's ET Now GBS. Now my guest, Ray Dalio, I would say my colleagues Avan and Vikram, well, they've not introduced the real fact, which is that Mr. Dalio has made, as a practitioner, as somebody who's a historian, but is also a practitioner, highest amount of wealth ever for his clients. Are you interested in hearing how he's made the wealth? Should I carry on with the session? Highest amount of wealth ever been made by a hedge fund manager for his clients. Mr. Dalio, I guess that's a powerful introduction, right?
So glad to be here.
It's such a pleasure, Mr. Dalio, to have you on ET Now GBS. Mr. Dalio, you always look at world, sir, based on 5 factors: economy and credit, internal peace and conflict, external issues between countries, climate change, and technology. If you have to look at the mechanics of the world, rather than giving our audience a fish to eat, if they have to catch the trick, how to catch the next fish, how would you put your thoughts into play and explain some of these pointers? The number one being, sir, economy and credit.
Thank you for asking me, and thank you for having me there today. Yes, you're right. My goal is to explain the mechanics of this, and then we can reflect on what's happening. As you say, I'm a practical investor who has to make macroeconomic investment decisions every day. And I learned in my life that many things that surprised me didn't happen in my lifetime, but happened many times in history. So there were 3 big forces that drew my attention to study history over the last 500 years, and then I discovered the other 2 of the 5. But the first is to understand the mechanics of credit, money, debt, and economics. In other words, credit gives buying power. Credit also creates debt. Debt has to be paid back. That debt has to be paid back with hard money or soft money because they print more money. If that debt goes to create productivity, it raises living standards and it's successful. And so that dynamic has happened, but in a most important way in the United States, which is the world's treasury market that the interest rates all around the world are operating by, produced an enormous amount of credit and debt, and are continuing to produce an enormous amount of credit and debt that is having an effect on the interest rates and the money markets and the economy, which we will go into in a second. That very much relates to the internal political issues. So when we talk about internal, we're dealing with conflict internally. It's particularly important in the United States, but it exists in every country. That internal populism has emerged, particularly in the United States, in which there is a populist, meaning almost an extremist of the left and an extremist of the right, that have irreconcilable differences. And we're going to have not only an election, but a risk of unacceptable conflict in that political situation and the social situation that exists in varying degrees in different countries, but particularly in the United States, most importantly. Right. And then, of course, there's the third influence, which is the change in the global world order, the relative power of countries, and how the system works. In 1945, we created the world order that we're in. The way these world orders develop is there's a great war, and then the dominant power and powers decide how that works. And then there's a system. The reason that the United Nations is in New York and the World Bank and IMF are in Washington, D.C. is because of that dominant power. And that world shift is taking place, and India, of course, is right in the middle of that. That dynamic operating with the financial and the internal conflict creates a classic dynamic that we've seen repeat over time. And number 4 is droughts, floods, and pandemics, acts of nature, have caused more deaths and have caused more falls of governance systems, of orders, than any of the other ones. And we see that with climate change and the costs of climate change, just the financial costs of climate change, that's a big consideration. And of course, over time, number 5 is the inventiveness of mankind, and that goes with new technologies. And we're seeing this dynamic play out. Right. And what I saw and covered in a study of mine, which is then written in a book called The Changing World Order. That right. The Changing World Order, I did a video also on it. You see these patterns happen over and over again. So when we look at them, that interrelationships, very important.